let's take a little longer look here at parabolas in vertex form. And not only with graphing, but of course, how can we take a graph and then create the equation? So how can we kind of go backwards in that process? All right, well, let's start with graphing. Let's say we had this equation and you're asked to graph. So we know from the previous lesson that the first thing that we want to identify is the vertex. And so if I was looking at this, I could see that my vertex is at 2, 5. So 2, 5, which is right here. And then I know that I use my step pattern, my 1, 3, 5, and that gets multiplied by the a value out front. So let's times that by, whoops, a negative 0.5 times by a negative 0.5 times by a negative 0.5. And when we do, what we get is negative 0.5, negative 1.5, and negative 2.5. So basically we've halved all these numbers. So the negative tells me that I open down. And so I'm going to go 1 to the right. And then instead of going 1 down, I'm going to just go halfway. And then 1 to the right and 1.5 down, which is here. And then 1 to the right and then 2.5 down, which is there. And then I'll do the same thing over on the left-hand side. I'm going to go 1 to the left, halfway down, 1 to the left, 1.5 ways down, 1 to the left, and then 2.5 ways down. And I get, as you can see, this lovely symmetric parabola that I can draw my curve through. There we go. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to be able, instead of taking the equation and graphing it, can we take a graph and find our equation? So let's say this was our parabola that was given to us. We can see right here is our vertex. So that's where I would start. So my vertex is at 4, 7. Okay, so I know then that it's going to be x minus 4 squared plus 7. I just need to figure out the a value. So I'm going to look at my step pattern. And my step pattern 1 is that it's going down. So right away, I know that a is going to be negative. But I go 1 to the right, and then to get to my parabola, I have to go 2 down. And then I go 1 to the right, and then to get to the next part of my parabola, right there, I had to go 6 down. Same thing on the opposite side. So 1 over, this is a little bit long, 1 over and then 2 down, 1 over and then 6 down, and then 1 over, and I have no idea because now I'm off the graph. So my step pattern used to be 1, 3, 5, but now my step pattern is 2, 6, and something. I'm not quite sure what that third one is, but how did I go from a 1 to a 2 and a 3 to the 2? What did I multiply, the same number, what did I multiply the 1 by and the 3 by in order to get to a 2 and a 6? And we can see that we had to multiply by 2, okay? So that means this would have been a 10, 2, 6, 10. So we can see that from our graph that our step pattern, that we had multiplied those numbers by 2. And of course, because it's going down, it must be negative, right? Because it's going down, so negative 2. So then my equation must be y equals negative 2 bracket x minus 4 squared plus 7. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Suppose we had this picture of this archway and we wanted to find the equation of an arch. Well, just by itself, it becomes really hard to do. But if I can superimpose a grid on top of it, like so, notice now that I can actually kind of see where this is going on. Now, I want to show you, same thing, we're going to start with our vertex. So my vertex is right here, which is at -2, 4. And then from there, I'm trying to look at my step pattern, but my step pattern might be a little bit difficult to see on the grid. Okay, so if it does, what you can do, just to make things a little bit easier maybe, is we can do this algebraically. So I know right now x plus 2 squared plus 4 is my equation so far. I'm just missing that a value. If I can find another point on this line, so let's say this point right here, which is at 0, 2, that's an x and that's a y. So I can plug those values in for x and y in order to solve for a. So look at this. If I put a 2 in for y, and then a, and then I put a 0 in for x, I get this. So 2 is equal to 0 plus 2 is 2, squared is 4. So that's going to give me 4a plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4 from each side, gives me -2 plus 4a divided by 4 divided by 4. So a equals -1/2, which means that my equation must be -1/2 x plus 2 squared plus 4. So if it's hard to see the step pattern on your actual parabola, you don't need it. You can just pick a point, any point off the parabola, other than the one that you've already used, the vertex, and plug it in for x and y and solve for a. And that will give you the equation of the parabola. All right, so practice finding equations of parabolas, whether you're given the graph, when you're given the graph, so you can come up with the equation. And if you have any questions, come see me.